There are two casts that I use pretty much every day that I am on the water fishing a trout stream. They are the 180 cast and the Frisbee cast. In Pennsylvania, we have nothing but trees. And more often than not, the best places to fish are underneath trees. So what I have done is employed into my fishing technique a style of casting and fishing that keeps everything on this level of a playing field. I don't want to make any casts that are looping up and over, and I don't want any of my hook sets to be straight up as well. Briefly about hook sets, the fish are always facing upstream, right? So we want to set the hook downstream at an angle. Whereas if we set up and just lift the rod up, if it does pop out of a fish or a rock or anything like that, it usually goes into a tree, which is something we want to avoid because we have a lot of trees to deal with. For this demonstration, I've put an indicator on just so you could see it a little bit better, but I want you to get the mechanics of this cast down, and you could use it for any kind of fishing really, streamer, dry fly, anything like that, but primarily we use it for nymphing. I want to anchor my cast downstream 180 degrees from wherever I'm trying to fish. I pick my spot, I have my rod tip kind of up at an angle just so I know that the flies aren't going to be hooking anything on the bottom. They're just kind of skating along the water surface down there as I'm prepared to make my cast. I pick my spot, and all I do is give it a little flick upstream. My rod tip is still up, and I drift down towards myself. If I get a bite, I set the hook at an angle downstream, and that sets me up immediately for my next cast. I'm set up for my next cast. I mentally pick my spot. If I make my cast and it doesn't quite go where I want it to go, I'll set the hook back downstream, reset my cast, and make another one. So again, the 180 principle is wherever my flies are anchored down here, they will go 180 degrees in the opposite direction, so I can use that for my accuracy. If I want to cast further up into this corner up here, I can anchor my flies downstream in that direction and send them up that way. If I want to fish further out across the water, and let's say I even have trees behind me, I'm not going to do a roll cast. I'm going to anchor my flies down in this area here and cast them out. And if one thing you should notice is it takes very little effort. Pick your place where you're going to cast, and if it doesn't go there, recast. Because I'm not roll casting and I don't have line on the water, my recast has very little impact on the water, and I'm not spooking very many fish at all. The other aspect of this cast is what I call the Frisbee cast. Now again, in conjunction with the 180, I anchor my flies 180 degrees of where I want to cast, and I relate it to throwing a Frisbee. Whether I'm throwing it like this or like this, I keep it on that level playing field. Again, I don't want my flies to loop up and over because that's not only going to be trees, but it's going to create a higher impact splash when the flies do hit the water or your indicator. So with the Frisbee cast, I can cast from either shoulder. If you notice across the stream, I have a nice juicy looking tree limb there that's just calling my flies, but I'm not going to let it have my flies. I'm going to fish underneath of it using the 180 and the Frisbee cast. I can anchor my flies in front of me and send them forearm like a Frisbee like that. I could also anchor them behind me and send them upstream like that. But notice that my indicator is level with the water. It never comes up and over. It doesn't catch any wind. This is especially useful for Euro nymphing in windy conditions. How do you get your cast upstream when the breeze is pushing you downstream? You use that water tension to load your rod and send the cast upstream. My rod is a magic wand. when you try to point the rod to where you want it to cast and put effort into it, it doesn't work. My magic wand should just be waved in this area, and the wand should be doing all the work for me. When my fly is anchored, I have connection between rod tip and fly. I don't want to have slack and then go forward, because that causes sloppiness. It causes the line to shock and twist around itself. So what I'll actually do is cast downstream to get my line nice and clean and stretched out going that way, so that I can cleanly send it forward in the same direction. 180. The way it is down this way is the way it's going to be that. So if it's nice and clean this way, it'll be clean going that way. But notice where my rod is. My rod tip stays up there. I'm waving it and using it like magic. I'm not putting work into it. When I send my flies downstream, my rod is still, boom, right in this position. When I go upstream, my rod is in that position again. And this does a number of things. First off, it allows your flies to fall naturally and softly. They don't cause a lot of impact on the water. But secondly, and probably most importantly, is it sets you up immediately for a bite. As soon as that fly enters the water, we could have what we call reaction bites, where the fish eat it as soon as the fly touches the water. I hate missing those fish. I want to catch all those fish. So if I'm set up right away and I'm not trying to point my rod where I'm casting, which is like a natural habit of a lot of anglers, I'm waving it, I'm keeping it high. My line hits the water, and I immediately have connection between the line and my rod tip. Now I fished all this other water already, and I want to really hit under this tree now because it looks juicy, and I could see some fish rising underneath of it because we have bugs everywhere like crazy. What I'm going to do is maybe just skim this first row here and then change my angle and use the Frisbee cast to cast underneath of it. Now I'm going to take a couple steps and see if I can get really far underneath of it. I'm going to anchor my flies here and use a forearm cast, Frisbee cast. Send it all the way back there under the tree. You see how I did that? I'm going to anchor my fly up here and send it 180 degrees. Notice it's low. I can keep it nice and low and drift right under that tree. And if I get a bite, I'm not going to set up like that. I'm going to set to the side and downstream at a low angle.